We did the A1C, and after going on this diet, my A1C went from 6.1 to 5.5 in the period of just a few months.
Today we have an awesome testimonial for you. Today's testimonial comes from Greg Dalton. Now, Greg was diagnosed with prediabetes with an elevated A1C. And previous to his diagnosis with prediabetes, he was eating a low glycemic index diet because that's what he was told to do. And he thought that was the most appropriate way to control his blood glucose. But what Greg found was that that actually wasn't the case. He then started the Mastering Diabetes program, and by eating a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, he's been able to actually drop his A1C to non-diabetic levels, and he now can eat higher glycemic index foods, and he feels like $1,000,000. Now, the best part about this story is that Greg actually has a low C-peptide value of 2.54, which means that he actually has an impaired insulin secretory capacity. And despite that, he was still able to adopt a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, increase his high-carbohydrate food intake, and see tremendous results. Now, I'll let Greg tell his entire story. It's really good, and you're definitely going to want to hear it. One thing to take into account here is that sometimes Greg does eat small amounts of oil, sometimes he eats small amounts of fish, and sometimes he has some bread. But despite that, it still works. Low-fat, plant-based whole food nutrition has got his diabetes health to the best place it's been in years, and now he feels fantastic. If you like what you see, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and to click the bell so that you can receive notifications when we post videos in the future. And also, be sure to leave a comment and tell us about your experience on the glycemic index. Are you following it? And if so, what has it done for you?
Well, my blood sugar has been marginal pre-diabetic for a number of years, and I've been pricking my finger every day and watching that number and trying to get it below 100, and been really frustrated with that, getting it below 100 despite pretty decent weight, exercise, etc. So when I met you at the Q conference, I thought, and we started talking, and that really got me interested in, I had been watching my carbs and doing the whole low carb thing. But when I met Cyrus at a conference, we got started to talking, and I got intrigued by his alternative approach to sugar management. It wasn't full on paleo. I wasn't going paleo because I'm keen aware of the saturated fats and health effects of heart disease, etc., of going full on paleo. So I was trying to kind of walk a line with some fish, other, non-animal sources of protein. I did eat some cheese and dairy, and other plant-based foods. So it was kind of an omnivore, a pescatarian / omnivore, but occasional chicken. My wife's Chinese, so we do eat a fair amount of other food that used to have legs. That was my diet before. More plants, more thinking about what's really the biggest thing that you did for me was telling me to ignore the glycemic index, because I've been looking at glycemic index foods, and I hadn't eaten bananas in years, and I wouldn't touch watermelon, and pineapple was a no-no. And so, letting go of the glycemic index was the biggest thing, because I've been always conscious of the glycemic index and looking up on Livestrong and what's the glycemic index of this food or that food. And moving away from the glycemic index was the biggest significant change. Letting go of that, reintroducing bananas, foods that are highly glycemic, but non-processed natural carbohydrates. That was the biggest change. What I reintroduced into my diet that I had expelled from my diet because of the glycemic index. 10 years ago, my A1C was about 5.4. In October of 2017, it hit 6.1, which is in the pre-diabetic range. And that's what I was like, whoa, okay, that's going up. 6.1 was a big number for me. Oh, bananas. Bananas are back. Bananas are part of my life. I had 2 of them today, at lunch, breakfast, having fruit in the morning. Bananas are carrot juice. I love carrot juice, and that had been kind of a no-no because of the sugar content. So now I use I actually do smoothies with carrot juice as the base rather than water or a milk. So I love carrot-based smoothies. So carrot juice, bananas, watermelon, a little bit of pineapple. Those are some of the high glycemic foods that I brought back. So I've been focused on that magical number of 100, having to get my blood sugar below 100. And that was pretty tough. Even some days when I'd ride my bike 50 miles and lead a fairly active lifestyle, work at a standing desk, cycle some days to work, swim in the morning. And it was still, that 100 number was tough to crack. But then we did the A1C, and after going on this diet, my A1C went from 6.1 to 5.5 in the period of just a few months. So that was a big boost to get that A1C down, and it was a big relief to not be so worried and stressed out about that 100. Diabetes runs in my family. I was really worried about that 100, being in that 110 range, and now Cyrus is telling me that's okay to be 110 on a daily basis, as long as the A1C stays down below 5.6. It comes pretty naturally. I mean, I am eating some fish. I have a romance with olive oil and rosemary bread that is hard to break. So there's a few foods that I'm still haven't gone totally zen and been able to detach from those foods. Otherwise, adjusting to the idea of what is satisfaction, what it means to be full. I've changed that a little bit. We worked a lot on time of day eating, shifting calories earlier in the day, dinner earlier, not having those evening snacks, trying to be full around 4 or 5 p.m. so that I'm not eating 3-4 hours before going to bed. So shifting calorie intake earlier in the day. Working on breakfast, having a bigger day in the middle of the day, bigger meal in the middle of the day rather than at the end of the day. So calorie shifting, time of day, and the frustrations. There are a whole lot of frustrations other than my, romance and attachment to olive oil. Friends have come up to me and I've told them I'm doing low fat instead of low carb. And they're like, I don't think that's right. What kind of wacko you've been talking to? And, the proof is in the A1C. I would say that give it a try. I do have, a good amount of energy when I eat heavy foods. I feel sluggish. Other people, doctors I know say, yeah, there's the low fat way and there's the low carb way. Both are legitimate. Maybe even the low fat way might even be validated by some recent research. And then there's the whole artery and high cholesterol risk of going paleo, high saturated animal fats. So I would say give it a try. There's a lot you can eat. And when I say people that I address prediabetes by not paying attention to the glycemic index, that seems kind of heretical to them, contrary to what they've heard. I do feel liberated by not having to pay attention to the glycemic index, because now if I just basically have fat in my mind, is there fat in that? And it's sometimes hard to explain to people that I don't even eat the good fats, or very little, like avocado, olive oil, those sorts of things, so-called good, polyunsaturated fats, which people associate like, what's wrong with that? I thought there's good fats and bad fats. And it is, living by the glycemic index was driving my wife nuts, because it's complicated and you have to look up this food. It's not very intuitive in terms of, what's high and what's low. And with fat, it's a lot more intuitive to understand, this, even the good fats and nuts or certain oils, et cetera. Of course, animal products, all have some fat. So it's a lot easier map to navigate going low fat than low glycemic, because the glycemic index is not intuitive. It's complicated. I can't remember, is pineapple high? I can remember pineapple, but certain things, it's just, there's some real surprises in the glycemic index. And there's not a whole lot of great data out there in terms of specific foods. And then, of course, anything that's packaged or restaurant, you don't really know. So I find by living by low fat a lot simpler than living by low carb. I feel pretty good with my diet the way it is right now. We're experimenting a little bit with occasional 16-hour fasting, skipping breakfast. It's too hard for me to skip dinner because I'm sitting around the house and there's this food calling, tempting me everywhere. But skipping breakfast and getting out the door to work and holding on till noon, I can do that occasionally. That's more for kind of, I don't know, calorie restriction and experiment than actual blood sugar management. But that's probably the biggest thing, and then maintaining the gains that I have and not slipping back and telling myself, well, I can cheat a little because I got a 5.5. I have no regrets. It's been a challenge. It's been helpful to have your weekly support and accountability, and it's stabilized. My weight hasn't changed that much, but certainly the numbers, the A1C is the main number.